You are now listening to Asking for a Friend with TalkDoc, sharing insights through real, honest, and practical ways to improve your communication and relationships. Featuring your hosts, Dr. Pamela Kreiser, Meredith Edwards-Nagel, and Teighlor Polindo.
We are so excited to have you back, Staci Ross, back with us on Asking for a Friend with TalkDoc. If any of you are listening and you remember this familiar voice, you heard Staci talk to us about gaslighting on episode 23 and 24. So today we've invited her back to get caught up with what's new with her. And we're going to also have the expertise of Kim Newlin, who is the director of nursing. She's the director of nursing somewhere. And she does a lot of work in the area of women and heart attacks. So we're going to talk to her as our expert today. Meredith and Teighlor, you have to meet my good friends. Well, you know my one friend, Staci, here, who is someone who's on our podcast before, as we talked about. This is Kim Newlin, and she is a nurse and a director of nursing. And she is here to help us with our episode because we need experts. We need answers, Kim.
Yes. It is an honor to be here. I've loved listening to your show. So thank you for having me.
So great to meet you.
Yeah.
And I'm happy to be back. Hi, ladies. Congratulations
Hi,
on all the wonderful things that have been going on in your lives this last year. I know there's just been wonderful little baby marriages and all sorts of stuff. So very
Time
happy
flies.
for all of you. Yes, a lot happens in 1 year.
Yeah. Isn't that true? God.
Yes.
Really crazy. So, Stace, I have a question for you.
Yes.
What's new with you?
Well, so it's been, I think, a year. I think July last year is when we did the podcast, correct? Something like that, mid-July, ironically. A lot has happened in the last year. I know I shared with you ladies when we were talking about that topic of narcissism, I was sharing with you a little bit in there about my health history that I've been, was fighting breast cancer for the last 3 years. And after the podcast, just very soon after, like maybe 2 weeks after, I ended up in the hospital for a week with COVID. And then I had another recurrence of my cancer. So I had to have a lumpectomy. And then a little over a month ago, I actually had a heart attack, which came as a huge surprise to me, as well as everyone else around me.
Wow.
I'm only 52. I'm not that old to be having them. And I know Kim will address age and things like that. And I have a unique circumstance, but it's been a crazy month. I don't know if you want to hear all the details now, but I'm happy to share with you what happened. Okay.
Story.
And I have to be honest with you, this will probably be one of the first times I can tell everyone without having a panic attack, because it's very much a big deal. And Kim can talk about that too, the after effects that people deal with. During the last winter season, I got back into playing tennis. That's actually how Kim and Pam and I know each other. I got back into playing tennis, and during the cold nights, my chest would really hurt. And I kept thinking that was just that I hadn't fully recovered from COVID. Like maybe my lungs were still hurting or something. Didn't think much more of it. Just was like, okay, I'm out of shape. I've got to get back onto things. And then late May, it started happening in the warm weather. And I thought, well, that's kind of strange, but I really must be out of shape. I need to start getting back into working out, because I'd been sick for so long. I wasn't doing like the gym workouts and stuff anymore, but I was ready to kind of mentally to get back into all that. I went up hiking in Tahoe, and about 15 minutes into my hike with my husband, I started having chest pain and my left arm went numb. And I asked him to stop, and we took a breather, and in the back of my brain, I thought, well, that's weird. I said, I wonder if that's like a heart attack. Ha ha. Like, I mean, really, I literally dismissed it completely. I was dehydrated. We were up in altitude. I made all these little excuses, caught my breath. We moved on the hike, and it never happened again. So I didn't think twice about it. So the very next weekend, I was supposed to go camping back up in Tahoe. That got canceled at the last minute. So I decided to join this new gym and do this HIIT workout. 30 minutes, no big deal, right? I'm like, okay, I'm ready. I'm going to go do this. So I go to the class, and I'm barely into it, 10, 15 minutes, and I am sweating like more than normal. I'm thinking, well, that's weird. Okay, again, I'm out of shape, but seems a little excessive. Then I started to feel dizzy. And then I started to feel a little nauseous. And I'm not really someone who gets nauseous. I know that sounds weird, but even when I went through chemo, I never threw up. It's just not a first reaction for me. So I excused myself, went in the bathroom, put cold water on my face. I was pretty clammy. And I just thought, oh, this is so sad, Staci. You've got a long way to get back into shape. I kept telling myself this. The other weird thing is while I was working out, my jaw really hurt. We had to put dumbbells on the back, like the bar on the back of my neck, like our neck, and do squats. And I was like, gosh, that really hurts on the back of my neck. But again, just thinking out of shape. So didn't finish the class, got into my car, sat there, and just knew something wasn't right. Like I just felt off. Supposed to run a bunch of errands and just decided, okay, I'm going to go home. I don't feel good. Got home. And by the time I got home, I started having that same chest pain I had the weekend before, numbness down my left arm. And this is the things not to do, ladies. So then I thought, I think maybe I'll just go take a nap. Maybe I just need to rest. I probably have overexerted. Yeah. I called my husband because I wanted to tell him. He didn't pick up. He was out of town and he was out of range for his phone. And I thought, I know he'll tell me to go rest. I probably overdid it. Took a nap, felt a little bit better when I woke up, came downstairs, was just, like I said, kind of out of it. I just literally laid like a couch potato. That's what they just joke about. My friend was like, oh, you probably need potassium. I didn't have any fruit in the house. So I DoorDashed bananas and watermelon.
Oh my God. Stop.
Sitting on the couch eating it. And all of a sudden the pain came back, the chest pain, the numbness, a little bit of dizziness. And I thought, oh yeah, I'm not even doing anything. I'm literally laying on the couch. This isn't right. So I'm like, what do I do? What do I do? And then I thought of Kim, because I know Kim's expertise. I knew she was home. I really feel there was some divine intervention because this was a Saturday. On Friday night, her daughter graduated from high school, and on Sunday was the graduation party. And I didn't even want to bother her because I knew she'd be running around busy getting ready for everything. But I called her anyway, and she was like, I'm just cleaning the house. What's going on? And I told her, I said, oh, I'm a little concerned. I want to tell you what I'm feeling, and maybe you could give me your advice. And she said, you're not going to like what I have to say. Besides not being a man, you check off every other box. You need to get to the hospital immediately. Everyone was gone for the weekend. And she said, I'll come over right now. So she was over within literally 5 minutes, picked me up. We went straight to the hospital. Great friend.
I was cleaning toilets. I mean, really, come on.
What are your choices?
She got me out of that. No, I'm just kidding.
Get out of doing that.
Saturday night. I'm that exciting of a person.
I felt very lucky though, that was the day of your 3-day option. So Kim took me to the hospital. We got into the ER, and it was kind of a strange thing because I was talking. I was not super out of breath. And Kim, I might forget some of the things. So please tell me if I'm not remembering it right. They did an EKG. It seemed normal, but they brought me in and they ran some blood work. And that's when they started to realize it was serious. And Kim kept saying, tell them all the other symptoms you're having. Then the ball started rolling. And from there, they checked me into the hospital. God bless Kim. She stayed with me for hours. I kept saying, please go home. You've got your family to deal with, and my husband wasn't even in town. He wasn't able to get back. But anyway, they checked me in, started running a bunch of tests, knew that they were going to keep me in. And they were even talking about doing a cath. They kept saying a cath. And I'm like, okay, I don't know how serious that is. I don't even exactly know what that is, but I knew Kim was doing something because she was on her phone a lot while we were sitting there. So I knew she was working some stuff behind the scenes. They checked me in that night. I was in surgery the very next day. So they had to put a stent into my heart or to my left. What is it? LAD. What is that, Kim?
It's the artery for the left side of your heart, anterior descending. Yeah,
that's it. Anterior descending. So they was 100% occluded, fully blocked, which is crazy. Got me in surgery Sunday, and then I was home Monday. So that's also a very weird thing. Yes. Yeah. They release you the next day. And it's kind of a weird thing because like you break a bone and you kind of can see you've got a cast on, right? Yeah. This is so different. And the fact that you go home the next day, but your world has literally been turned upside down. And it's been a really tricky and difficult month to navigate. And I can get into all that, when we talk a little bit more about other things, but yeah, I don't know if there's much I would have done differently, to be honest with you, because I couldn't imagine that was happening. And what I will share with you, at least the feedback I've received from the cardiologist, is my heart attack was due to my cancer treatments. So the damage to my heart from my chemo and my elevated cholesterol from my aromatase inhibitor, the medication I'm on. So yeah, it's been a crazy month, but that's kind of the gist of what's been happening in the last year.
Man.
Yeah. Wow.
Yeah, it's a lot.
Well, it seems like you're okay to an extent. We're very glad to have you here.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thankful for that.
Yeah, thank you. I'm very grateful to be here too. And I am okay in some ways. The stent actually got more blood flow into my body, that's been a good thing. So, you know, but it's going to take some time to heal. And I'm not the most patient person. So
I hear you on that.
Yeah.
One thing I would observe about you, Stace, is that, you know, the rest of us haven't had a lot of these dramatic experiences, and you've had 3 now, or maybe more than 3. I don't know. And you're here. Yeah. So I feel like you belong here. You belong on this earth. So the rest of us walk around and we're like, I think I'm supposed to be here, but you keep getting the win column there. And I know Kim helped a lot with that.
Very much so.
Yeah, I said that you're just a secret shopper for healthcare, but you're having to pay the bills.
That part I do not like.
I know.
Secret
I'm not
shopper.
interested in this job anymore.
Where do we put the ratings?
You're testing all elements of our healthcare system.
That's right. Yeah. I'll write a blog on it or something. I don't know what I'm supposed to be doing. Yeah.
Yeah. Kim, anything to add to that story? Or
I do think I said you texted me and said, I have something very important. And I said, okay, this is serious. I will definitely reach out to her. She's not asking me just to go have coffee. I think that I asked if you would call 911 and you were like, yeah, not so much. Don't really want to. And I said, okay, that's fine. I'll come. And, we spent probably about 5 hours together that night. And in my reflection, I may not have helped the situation because I think you and I talked for 5 hours straight. So it was like our selfish opportunity to catch up. And so in hindsight, I think they probably thought she has to be okay because they are talking nonstop.
That's probably true. Maybe a coffee date would have been better.
Yeah.
Not the ER.
Coffee date. Yeah.
Actually, what you don't realize though is even though they weren't maybe totally sure till they started running the tests, your presence was exactly what I needed. That was the most calming force. To do that alone would have been very scary. Yeah. Very, very scary. And here's the other thing, ladies. The hospitals are not allowing spouses and people to come. They barely let Kim come in. They're like, oh, no, you have to stay outside. And she says, I work here. I'm a nurse. Oh, okay. So that was really nice because I would have been all by myself and that's not good.
Yeah.
And I still think if you were a male and had walked in and again, no criticism to my hospital, I think things would have moved a bit faster too.
Interesting.
Yeah.
So
they kept saying maybe something else, maybe, so yeah.
So we should probably talk about some stats related to women and heart attacks and kind of review what's going on out there. After this happened, and I learned about this from Staci, I did some research and I was startled at the difference between men and women in how they present the symptoms, how they talk about the symptoms, how they advocate differently for themselves or don't. We wanted to do this episode to have you who are listening forward this to all the women in your life. Give them a chance to learn from Kim, and we're going to go through the signs and management of that and give some advice. But it was really put on my radar by you, Staci, and it's just incredible what's going on.
Just looking at the research, it says that cardiovascular disease is the leading cause of mortality in women in the US and globally. I had no idea that was true. I don't know what I thought was. But when you talk about kind of the difference between men and women, like if this is number one, why do we treat them differently or why?
Yeah.
What's going on?
Yeah, right. There was a study in the New England Journal of Medicine. They talked about women in their 50s and younger are 7 times more likely to be misdiagnosed in a cardiac event and sent home than men.
Jesus.
Wow.
Which is a stunning number.
Yeah. And another interesting fact of percentages here by the British Heart Foundation, a study reported that women had a 50% higher chance than men of receiving a wrong initial diagnosis following a heart attack. It's a really high percentages.
Yeah, they're startling, especially when it's the number one killer, right? It's like, what's going on? It was funny because when we did the research and when I talked to you, Staci, I felt such motivation to talk about this here in this format.
Yes.
Let's get serious about how we communicate about this topic. Kim, why is this happening?
It's years in the making, for sure. Okay. Teighlor, what do you think is the number one killer of women?
I guess I just assumed cancer. Most of the women I know have had cancer.
Yeah. A lot of the original research that was done on symptoms and risk factors and treatments was 100% men. And so all of those algorithms we have and the symptoms, like what we call typical symptoms, even though women are not having, I guess, typical symptoms, but are having them often more. Those were just developed on the research, and it was on men. We've known for years what causes heart attacks, but we've just and what the symptoms are, but it's just been in the male species and not the female species. I think that's part of it, right? So I think kind of what's taught and what's still in the textbooks and kind of what's on all of your cards. Like when I told Staci, you check off everything except being a male and smoking. So no smoking.
Yeah.
So
that's true.
Don't start, because we don't want to add that.
No, thanks.
So that too. And because it's known as a men's disease and it's not well known, we normalize it. Like what Staci did. I am probably out of shape. I have probably not been exercising. I have 3 kids at home that I take care for. I don't get enough sleep. I've been caring for my parents, and so I must be tired. There's a million different ways for women to normalize the symptoms that they're having. And some of the common symptoms women have, which are fatigue and shortness of breath, dizziness, can be attributed to so many things. It can be, I've been staying awake more, or I haven't been exercising. Maybe I've gained some weight. I've been stressed. I'm the caregiver for everybody. I've been working more. Allergies is a really common one. People have shortness of breath. The number of people I see who come in who've been put on an inhaler for kind of allergies or early asthma, and really it's the shortness of breath from the cardiac symptoms I should probably
like
actually
massive misdiagnosis, like massive.
Yeah, that's
so
strange.
the symptoms aren't necessarily different, but the way we kind of tell ourselves to minimize them is what is different between men and women.
No, it's a great question. So it's both. There's some research that shows that 2/3 of women don't have your typical chest pain, where it's only 1/3 of men don't have typical chest pain. So when you think about, the old TV shows or movies, and it's that crushing elephant, sitting on my chest pain. If 2/3 of women don't have that, then that's usually like your big red flag. So I think we tell ourselves if it's not that, it's not a heart attack. A lot of times the healthcare providers are trying to figure out another reason.
From my reading, it appeared that we've done most of the research on men, and we're even told that our symptoms are atypical, which makes men the marker for what's considered typical, which is crazy. If we make up 50% of the population, right? We're atypical and they're typical. Fascinating. I wanted to highlight that label because that's kind of interesting. But what I'm hearing you say, though, Kim, is the list is different. Is the list longer for women? Do they have a shorter list, like 5 things and we have 10 things? Or
you have like your typical, which are chest pain, radiating down your left arm, jaw pain, tingling, and then this whole list of atypical. But then those atypical ones, so GI symptoms, nausea, vomiting, cold sweats, fatigue, shortness of breath, those are under the atypical, but then those are the typical for women. Or more typical. Okay. Yeah, I know. So helpful. You just almost have to just like flip it on its head and then.
Yeah,
which kind of makes sense. They're the yin to our yang or something like that.
Yeah. But I don't think women necessarily know that, the GI stuff and the cold sweats. And I wouldn't say maybe I knew that before this.
Yeah. No, definitely. And what we learn in nursing school or medical school is kind of like pale, cool, diaphoretic, right? Not getting enough oxygen. Having some sweats can accompany it, but right, like Staci said, gosh, I'm sweating abnormally, but that weekend wasn't hot. I think it even rained that weekend. It was like atypically cool. Yeah.
But I was working out. So in my mind, I'm like, oh, maybe it's hot. And what's funny is that GI stuff too, because I had a few episodes of the stomach hurting and I really blew it off, even knowing I am not someone who typically gets GI stuff. How did I let myself not think that was something of subsequence, I just,
it sounds complicated. I mean, you really have to have the facts to be able to understand that these could all equal that thing.
And
Right.
you really need to listen as a clinician and ask the right questions, because you don't put all those things together, right? Like, why would my stomach hurt and my neck hurt? And right, like, because I think even I remember, Stace, you said, I put the lap bar on my back, on my neck, and they're like, oh, you must have bruised it. And I was like,
right.
Or not.
Again, or being out of shape. Oh, it's probably hard for you. I'm like, it barely weighed anything. Like it didn't add up.
It was a 2-pound pull.
It really was like not very heavy at all. I'm like, this is sad. So
a lot of what I'm hearing is it sounds like our, and I'm saying as a woman, our expression of this pain seems to be like something about us before it actually becomes something about what's actually happening.
Right.
Does that make sense?
Oh, interesting.
Like it's about me versus I'm having this actual pain.
Right.
yeah.
Because people don't believe it. I mean, I think, Stace, you even mentioned, yeah, I was in here one time, but they ruled it out as a panic attack. And I was like, no, don't say that. Don't say that. Because
but that was a long time ago. But
I know, but still, like, that's really, really common, right? So they say, oh, it is about you. So you kind of say, oh, it must be about me. Oh, I probably am not eating. I need some bananas and watermelon.
Yeah.
Almost the first thought was guilt and shame. Oh, I'm just not as fit as something I used to be, or I would, doing these things. I've just worn down, haven't slept, and all I heard was the self guilt and shame instead of like, oh, this thing is happening to me.
Yeah.
And then you combine that with not being taken seriously, perhaps, by someone. I'm not saying you had that care, Staci, but we're hearing evidence 7 times more likely to be misdiagnosed. So there's some disconnect between the person who's meeting all of these women that have this experience, and it's our number one killer. What's going on communicatively there? Is it that the physician has a predetermined view that they don't accept new information? Is it that people aren't giving the information? Is it that women don't know the signs, so they skip things? That's probably part of it. I mean, I think there's a lot that goes into it. What do you think, Kim?
Yes to all of what you just said. It's multifactorial, and it's, you talk about information becomes confirmation bias for what you think. And it's really hard as a clinician to make sure you stay open and listen to everything and ask those open-ended questions rather than going down that path. Do we need to do a better job educating women and their loved ones about it? Absolutely. I mean, I think that's a huge part. And there's a lot, if you've ever seen the Go Red for Women through the American Heart Association, they have a huge campaign to really raise awareness, do it. And shows like this, and there's actually a great, pretty funny video on American Heart Association of a young woman who is having a heart attack. And it's finally like her 9-year-old son who Googles the symptoms, who tells her to call 911. But she's like, I got too much to do. I got to pack lunches and
and we'll put that link to that in the show notes. So
good.
Everyone look out for that. I think it's called Just a Little Heart Attack.
Yeah.
Is that the name of it? Okay.
Just a little.
Just a little heart attack. You can hear the communication, just and little.
Yeah.
Very interesting. So one of the things in my reading was that women on the chest pain point, it sounds like men are more likely to come in and just go, I have chest pain, it's killing me. And women are saying, I have like tightening, or I have heaviness. Or would you have any comments on that, Kim?
Yeah. And Staci even was a good example of this, because they would walk in and say, all right, so, so you're not having any pain anymore? And she'd be like, no, it's actually a 6 or a 7 out of 10. And they're like, oh. So again, where I may have been a disadvantage to her was where we were talking. So I think we were distracting you, but she went up to the triage window and said, I am having chest pain. They did take her back right away. I mean, I think that was absolutely, it's the best kept secret that if you need to be seen quickly in the ER, you tell them you're having chest pain, even if you hurt a pinky. But she was, she was seriously having that. Yeah. So I think, and you kind of talk about the man cold. I don't know if it's like the man chest pain is experienced worse by the men, but we don't do a good job. Again, even Staci was saying, well, maybe because I'm out of shape. You were kind of normalizing it for them, right? You were discounting your own story versus going,
I don't even remember all that.
This
That's
really
crazy.
hurts. Yeah.
Yeah. It did, but you're in denial. I can't say it any other way. This cannot be a heart attack in my mind. You run through the things of I'm too young or, whatever those things are. I do kind of wonder if Kim hadn't picked up the phone that Saturday, what would I have done? Would I have continued to lay on the couch in that pain? I mean, again, nobody was home. Would I have eventually called 911? I'm not even sure what I would have done. And her being there, prompting me a little bit, let them know the other things you're feeling. What if I hadn't? That's another thing. I'm physically actually at the ER experiencing it. And yet I'm trying to be as honest as I can. Yeah, the pressure was constant and it was there. It wasn't painful, but it was, I don't know how you explain it, but it hurt. But it wasn't like, ouch, this is like a 9 or a 10, but it was definitely, I was very aware of it. So I don't know. It's a crazy experience. And it's funny, Kim, you're talking about the red dress and I'm thinking, oh, I have a pink ribbon and a red dress now. I'm so happy. But the truth is
overachiever.
Oh, yeah. But there is something to be said about getting this information out there. Because my circumstances are a bit unique, but I'm curious. My question to you, Kim, is what do you see age-wise with women? I know I'm a little bit of an anomaly, but maybe not as much as I think. Do you have a lot of 50-year-olds coming in or somewhere in that range? What do you typically see?
No, we're seeing more, and they're often late presenters. I'll pay you a little compliment. So I met with the cardiologist who put the stent in, and he's like, we just, it's hard when a woman who's 30 or 40 comes in.
Oh. Yes.
I didn't have the heart to tell him. Close.
That made my day.
I know.
Because they also
She's recovered, everyone. She's recovered now.
Yeah. Woo! I feel good.
I was like,
that's funny. Yeah. And you're saying it's more common. You're seeing more and more women.
Yes. And women, we are. One of my favorite all-time programs I run is what's called cardiac rehab. So it's taking in individuals after they've had an event, and then they go through like an exercise and lifestyle program. And our group was talking about it after Staci was in, and we were talking about, we're just starting to see younger women. And there is research out there. Where I'm working, we're actually working on a cardio oncology kind of risk screening tool and management program, and really looking at that through like a survivorship clinic. Yes, you're younger. We talked, you have a little bit of a remote family history, but it's not super strong. But a lot of the same risk factors for breast cancer are the same for cardiovascular disease. And like you said, your cholesterol was really high for several years because of those meds. And stress is a huge risk factor. I mean, you've been under more stress than most people I know, physical and just a lot going on. So not uncommon that we're seeing it. So
she had a lot of stress when she played tennis with me. She had a lot of stress.
Right.
Not with me.
Both Kim and Pam were my two main partners, ladies. So I was very blessed because they're both
nice.
Like amazing. I wanted to say something about the cardiac care, the rehab that Kim heads up. I'm attending that. Unfortunately, I can't do it at her hospital because it's out of network for me. So I'm at a different hospital, but she's trained some of the people over there as well. And I highly, highly recommend this because I had an episode during one of my sessions where I got nauseous again, dizzy, heart, the whole thing. And what you have to start to learn, because it's bad enough that the heart attack happens, but unfortunately now everything feels like a heart attack because anxiety feels like it, stress feels like it. And I was having to learn, it's horrible. So I'm not going to sugarcoat it.
Because you under evaluate it and then now you're over evaluating it, right?
Exactly.
Right.
And I ended up back in the hospital again because I didn't want to overreact, but I didn't want to underreact. I'm like, I don't know. And so I'm on a little heart monitor. You can probably see that maybe, I don't know, in the video. And they're just making sure I don't have AFib. What it turned out is a lot of it had to do with anxiety. So the same thing I ended up in the hospital for the second time happened during my cardiac rehab day. Could not have happened at a better place. They ran all the regular stuff, checked my glucose, checked my blood pressure, my heart rate. All of it was good. It turned out it was anxiety. You know, it was just this anxiety that creeps up, and it's I mean, I don't know, but I was glad it happened then, because now I'm learning I don't have to run to the ER every time. You know, I'm learning what's different. And so the class that Kim has created is essential. It's not just, oh, I think you should sign up for it. Everyone needs to go through this, because it allows you to start exercising again. And I love to exercise. I love to be active, and I'm missing it so much. And even the little things, the 15 minutes on a treadmill and 15 minutes on a bike, it's a little hard for me right now. So they teach you that. And the other thing Kim taught me, and they're reiterating, is that you have to be on a lot of medication once you've had a heart attack. I don't love medications. I tend to like to do things as naturally as possible. And Kim just explained it in a way that I was like, I got it. Okay. She said, you know, again, if you're broken a body part, you put a cast on that, but you can't put a cast on your heart. So the medications serves as that. It's like bubble wrapping your heart. And I think she even said, I'm sending it off to Hawaii for a little vacation. I'm like, I'd like to go there as well with my heart.
Take my body with you.
The concept of that allowed me to just be okay with all these changes that are happening, because they're not forever, you know, and the cardiologists super encouraging. They're like, you know what, you'll be surprised how much better you're going to feel, but we got to heal the heart before we get there. So learn to slow down. And maybe that's something, getting back to Kim's. Yeah, exactly. That's what one of the comments she made about, like, we as women are multi-jugglers. Like, we are constantly, right, just doing so many things. And this is a big lesson for me. Like, I mean, my life is like, stop, don't do much, chill out. And I'm like, okay. But, you know, we had to kind of do that through COVID. Like, it's been a lesson that a lot of people are learning in different levels, but this is like, I really have to hit the brakes, and it's hard. It's hard, but it's necessary. So
it sounds like knowing the symptoms and knowing what's just anxiety, that's key for you.
Yes.
But we saw in the research, it says even after seeking help, women get consistently worse care. And that the US, what does it say? When women have with heart attack symptoms, they're less likely to receive aspirin, be resuscitated. And even when they're being transported to the hospital, the ambulance don't turn on their sirens or flashing lights like they do for men. Like, what is that? That is insane to me. I don't understand.
That is insane.
Why would you not put on flashing lights for someone who's having a heart attack?
But if you don't believe her, if I think you're having a panic attack, why put the siren on?
You're just going to feed into the,
I was going to ask too, is there also, I mean, it's the not believing, right? And we're getting into that too, but there's a story I say in my head when I ever see a doctor or any sort of treatment I've had, even all through my recent delivery, you know, my child, of feeling like I had to prove that I was strong enough to the medical staff or something. This weird thing, like, I'm capable of this, you know, I can do it. I mean, all of this research said we're not being diagnosed, we're not, you know, being treated the same. How can we encourage women to use their communication to not do what I do, which is to be okay, you know? And I don't know. Be
a better advocate for themselves.
Yeah. So I want to do one thing before we get to that. I want to talk about the patterns of decision-making. The study that they did in Oregon talked about the 6 patterns of decision-making that they found. And you can comment on this at the end, Kim. First is knowing you're having a heart attack and then going to get help within 5 to 15 minutes. Second one, knowing and letting someone else take over. Third one, knowing and going on your own terms. So you don't like to ask for help. And you often, if you're in this pattern, you try to drive yourself to the hospital. I'm sure you have comments about that one, Kim. Knowing and waiting, you know, like taking a nap, or you don't want to disturb others, right?
Getting a banana.
My favorite, the banana. This is actually really good, because number 5 is managing an alternative hypothesis. So it must be potassium. I'm going to DoorDash bananas and watermelon.
Yeah, it must be out of shape. I must, like,
and then the other is to just minimize and hope it goes away. So I found those to be interesting and very reflective of what I know about women. What are your
Very
thoughts,
accurate.
Kim?
Oh gosh. Well, I do it all the time. I mean, I ignore everything until I'm going to have to amputate my arm or something.
Even as a nurse?
Yes, I'm so bad. My poor children. You're fine. I don't know what's coming out of your ear, but you're fine. So you talk about like life skills you teach your children, right? You really want them to just make sure you write everything down and go through either pros or cons. This is something we talk a lot about just in cardiac rehab is you have to write it down because otherwise you're not going to remember or you're like attribute it to something else, right? So one is knowing something's not right. I think we're all pretty good at realizing that, right? So that's kind of like the first part. I know something's not right. You just need to not go to the normalization piece. You need to say, okay, stick with the facts. What am I feeling? And if it's a lot of things all at once, and Stace, you may have had this too, even with your breast cancer diagnosis. What are all the things? And, you may not pick up the pattern, but you need to bring that forward and present it to whomever you're meeting with. And I mean, like you say, you just can't say, that's nothing. The more you do that, the more you bring that person along with that other kind of that alternate hypothesis, like you're talking about. I don't know if we do this when we bring a car to the mechanic. Oh, gosh, I probably drive it a little hard, right? Like we don't usually do that. We're like, these are all the things that are going wrong.
Yeah.
Fix it, right. So,
Yeah.
we need to kind of follow that.
Good
like,
example.
yeah. We try to diagnose ourselves and we just, because like Staci said, that's the last thing you want to think it's going to be. And oh my gosh, I need to go to my daughter's graduation next weekend. This will be super inconvenient.
So what Kim's referring to is my daughter graduated from college the next weekend. And I kept telling them in the hospital, okay, I don't know exactly what's happening, but I cannot miss my daughter's graduation next weekend. And at one point they're like, you might be having bypass surgery. And I'm like, no, that's not going to happen.
Oh my God.
I said, and if I do, I better still be able to go to her graduation, which I was able to go. So that was a blessing.
Wow.
But Kim's right. You're a mom first. It's the craziest thing, the stuff you think about.
Yeah.
Anyway.
And we minimize, we don't use pain. I mean, there's research out there, right, that shows that we don't use that word. And like you said, we don't want to be seen as weak.
When we use it, Kim, we use the word pain when we give birth.
I was going to say, and we also have childbirth. When we ask about it on a scale of 1 to 10, if you've given natural childbirth, we'll often say, okay, 10 is childbirth, right? So to try to get you on a scale, or just take that off the scale and don't even think about it because it's just a whole different experience. So it does make it hard.
Like
and
100?
Yeah, exactly.
Right.
So not on the childbirth pain scale, but on the other pain scale.
Right.
Yeah.
It's true.
Yeah.
Do we know why we don't say the word pain though?
I think for many reasons. We don't want to admit weakness. We don't want to be thought of as not being strong enough to handle it.
Don't want to exaggerate. Don't want to make a fuss. Don't want to have attention. Don't want to be having a heart attack.
Yeah.
And men, I think and maybe this is a good side of the men's side, that they think the disease is theirs. So if they have pain, they're like, hey, save me.
Yeah. They might consider that that's actually what's happening.
More readily because they've been normalized to think it's a man's disease like we all have.
Right. Exactly.
Yeah.
I don't know, maybe if it's just, again, as women, we do tend to tolerate and push through a lot of things. And so I found myself, I cried a lot, very scary, but at the same time, I also was like, okay, all right. Maybe again, knowing I had a goal of going to my daughter's graduation, but it was like, okay, I'm going to get through this and then we're going to figure the next step out. And that's,
but
I think that resilience part. Yeah.
Can I ask though, even that, like maybe that's just making me feel emotional, but even that in the hospital to think I have to get to the next thing. What
that's
is that?
That's a great example of,
I'm relating with that feeling that you're having, but what is that? Why are we not sitting in that room going like, I need to take care of this me right now, like this body of mine. Why am I like, get me better so I can go get out of here?
Well, I can only,
you.
I can only speak for myself. I lost out on a lot over the 3 years having cancer, something specifically with my kids. And when I had COVID, I couldn't take my son to college. And I just thought, nothing is going to step between this. Too much. I've lost too much. And I was very determined. And honestly, sometimes I think that serves me and women in general, that sort of drive and that maybe stubbornness and tenacity.
Oh yeah.
But I also see the flip side of it and how it may have got me. I don't want to say got me where I am in terms of having the heart attack, but there is a point of saying you really do need to slow down. Even though I don't feel like I could go any slower than I've been going these last few years. That's the message is like something needs to change because whatever was happening is not working, whether that's mentally, whether it's physically. And that's maybe the lesson also to take away from it. And that's personally how I look at my thing and all this stuff that happens to me. Like I have to learn something from it because the thought of it just randomly happening is just too much out of my control. Yeah.
You know, and Stace is super lucky. And I think you might have had this conversation with one of the cardiologists, but because she's overall, I mean, she was still playing tennis through this and healthy and, you know, very holistic and working on just lots of things. And so she actually built little detours, like blood vessels. So we call them collateral. So like if you think of a roadblock and then you have to build a road around it, her arteries were building these little detours to get blood to the heart. I think that's important risk factors. And I think even before the pain starts, right? Like you're talking about what's really important is knowing what the risk factors are and how much they do play a part of it, right? I mean, we have kind of your typical risk factors. Breast cancer and the treatment and that kind of stuff is separate. COVID, breast cancer, and heart disease, a lot of their basis is in inflammation too. So, and stress. So all of those are related. It's hard for us to measure that, but there's a lot we do know. On American Heart Association, they just changed Life Simple 7, which is a way to look at kind of your risk factors. And it's now the Essential 8, because they actually added the importance of sleep in there. So for you new moms, sorry. That may come a little later. You can actually do a heart score on this website before you even have symptoms. You know, like, oh gosh, I really am at risk because of, you know, I'm more sedentary. My diet's not great.
Are we putting this in the show notes? This link?
Yeah,
yeah,
sure are.
Yeah, for sure.
So tell us what the 8 are. The 8 are what?
The 8 are smoking, so don't smoke, and then diet, so eating kind of a low saturated fat diet. Don't eat foods that cause inflammation, like with a lot of processed foods. Know your blood pressure, know your blood sugar, because high blood sugar also leads to inflammation. Know your cholesterol. If you're overweight, you know, try to bring that down, especially if you have just more abdominal fat. It's called the brown fat. It causes more inflammation as well. Be active. The 8th one is sleep. So getting good, regular 7 to 8 hours a night of sleep, because you don't have sleep and then you raise your serum cortisol level, and cortisol is a stress hormone, and it just feeds into that inflammation cycle as well.
Makes sense.
Yeah. And you can actually calculate your score. If you're doing well on those Essential 8, if it's like 6 or more, your chances of a heart attack are really, really small. But the less of those that you have of those Essential 8 in your favor, your risk just goes up significantly. And they're kind of synergistic too. Like they add up, but then they feed on each other, especially smoking.
Just to clarify, because we're in California, smoking anything, tobacco.
No, that's a really good point.
I mean, I'm just trying to make it clear.
Good question.
No, and there's more research coming out about the impact of marijuana, vaping as well, and alcohol. More alcohol too leads to more, not an IPA, not just one beer or something at night, but just
that's just for maintenance.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
So what are some other things we can do here?
Starting at 20, I think, so if we had 16 people in a room, one of us would already have cardiovascular disease developing in our arteries. So it's knowing early that even those habits you're starting to develop in college, or just kind of as you start to raise a family and look at your food choices and how active you are or aren't. So those things early really do, it's just a cumulative effect, right? So knowing early for the risk factors is good. Knowing the signs and symptoms, obviously, and knowing them for a friend. I do also reflect back on what Staci was telling me when we were talking about how she was short of breath playing tennis. I wonder if I should have caught that a little bit sooner. I mean, I think you and I just kept saying, oh, that darn COVID, right?
Exactly.
Yeah. But I think listening to our friends when they're starting to say, or just make sure they know they can talk to you if they feel like they can't talk to someone else, and really advocating for them to be seen and write down those symptoms.
Women having a safe space to tell each other what's really going on.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
Well, I will tell you one thing, Kim, and I'm curious what your thoughts are on this. I feel like a lot of things for women in my age get blamed on menopause.
Oh, yeah.
And that it
Yeah.
feels like the fallout for every issue you could possibly have. Can you speak to that a little bit?
Yeah, absolutely. Women tend to have cardiovascular disease about 10 years later than men. And a lot of it's because there's a protective effect of estrogen. So that's just kind of a like, we'll start with that. So it's usually why women do present later, although not all the time.
Mm-hmm.
But you're right. I mean, think about your symptoms. I'm tired, sweating,
Mm-hmm.
right? Fatigue, dizzy. It's really, really common. And it's
Weight gain.
Yeah. Weight gain, all of
Yep.
that, right? Versus
Mhm.
you not feeling well enough to exercise at the capacity you're normally used to doing. And then you're sitting more and then not able to burn those calories, right? But really it's
Yeah.
not, it's because you're not able to exercise. There was a lot of research done on whether we should do hormone replacement therapy to prevent cardiovascular disease. That was kind of in the 90s, and that did not pan
Mhm.
out. That was actually not the solution. But you're right. Again, it's the time where you really start to see that increase in cardiovascular disease in women. And so I'm sure, did you attribute some of it to menopause?
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
But I was told that was a big thing.
Yeah.
Is there another way to test? Like, I've heard of something called like the Boston Heart Panel, or maybe that's not the right term, but some kind of blood work that you can do to check the quality of your heart or something. I mean, is that something, even like for everyone that's listening, like, is there something you can ask your doctor to run to give you even a baseline, like not just your lipid panels and stuff, but other things as well?
Yeah, I mean, there's more blood tests you can run, which will give you more diagnostics on like your cholesterol level. It'll break it down and help you understand some of those. You can get a coronary calcium score as well, which they can do through using a CT of your CT. It's called a CT angiogram, which can look at it as well. There's not enough evidence to show that just running those will pick up. Even you'll get false positives. And even we use like a stress test probably would have been good for you. Like if you had gone in and said, gosh, when I'm exercising, I'm getting the symptoms, they'd probably stick you on a treadmill and have you exercise and see what your EKG would do, or even check like an ultrasound of your heart to see kind of what was happening with the heart. But again, you have to have someone listen to you and then order the test. And unfortunately with stress tests, there are more false positives for women. So sometimes they discount the studies. Yeah.
It's hard to know what to trust.
Some of this that we're talking about reminds me of when we had Jamal on, I think it's our 19th episode, and he talks about how we kind of don't listen to our bodies anymore. One, like knowing yourself, I think is important, but we're always trying to minimize, and I think that's something women do a lot, minimize what's going on. And kind of with the car example, like the check engine light comes on, we tend to just like, oh, it's just because, or oh, this, instead of saying like, oh, maybe I need to change something, or I need to do something to address that check engine light. And I don't know, that's just kind of what I was thinking about a lot with this. My cousin and I always talk about was we never want to go to the bathroom, and our body's like telling us go to the bathroom, and we're like, we don't want to stop the conversation or miss out on fun. It's like your body is telling you something. Why are you always trying to shut your body down? And it's an important thing to know your body, to listen to your body. And if it's telling you, oh, I'm anxious, or, oh, I'm having a heart attack, I need to check in on this and maybe go to the hospital or change something in my life.
Right.
Sounds like part of knowing your body's telling you something though is to slow down enough to listen to it.
Right.
Yeah. I feel like we're sort of messing ourselves up a little by having communication a little. Yeah. Thank you, Meredith. I like that. We're messing ourselves up a little. The minimizing is a big one. What should we be not saying, Kim, and what should we be saying?
Yeah, I think making sure that you share everything that doesn't feel right, even if you don't think it's anything, because the sum of all those parts will often mean more. Don't discount don't come in saying, I'm sure it's nothing, or I have a lot of anxiety anyway, so it kind of feels like that. You don't want to color the water before they've had a chance to look at it,
Right.
and kind of come up with their own decision or differential diagnoses. Tell the right person, right? You can talk about it to other people, but you may actually need to get in there and make an appointment, and it may be a nurse practitioner or a clinician. And often I see patients and they have about 5 different providers, right? Because they're seeing a kidney doctor or different things. And so one of my first questions I ask is, who listens to you the best? Like, who do you trust the most? Who would you go to? And often it's not their primary care provider, which is interesting. That make sure you're sharing what's going on with that person. So you kind of got to find your person, and it should be someone, in the healthcare field if your body is not feeling right. And again, it may be a friend who's in healthcare, but it is good because sometimes you also kind of maybe leave certain things out with friends. And so you really got to go in and share everything, even the embarrassing things, right?
Like the weed smoking, Staci.
Just gummies. That was prescribed anyway, so
that's for another episode.
That's right.
That's a different episode. Yeah. So we talked about what we shouldn't say. What should we say? Let's say I'm having some symptoms. I've heard this podcast. I'm walking into the ER because I've decided to actually go. Maybe I've stopped talking myself out of it, and I'm there. What do I say? 'Cause the men say, I'm having chest pain. I need to be seen right away. What should we be demanding? Should we be direct, or what do you suggest?
Yeah, I think you could even go so far as to say, I'm having, and you list your symptoms. So I'm having chest pain that's radiating down my left arm to my jaw, nausea. I've had nausea, I've been vomiting, and I've had cold sweats. I've never felt this set of symptoms before. And I am very concerned that I'm having a heart attack. I mean, I think you can say that much because then you're priming them to what you want them to look for. I mean, the only downside is if it's not, right? I mean, like really it's
okay.
It's okay. That's why we have emergency rooms and providers, is to help you catch these things. The other thing is if it's been happening for a while, is make sure, because they'll start asking, how long has this been happening? Well, I had the chest pain last week when I was exercising. It happened 15 minutes in. Like Staci was doing a really good job with this. Plus I was having fatigue doing things I normally do. Normal. And it's hard when people are active. Like this happens with men too, I will say, is, well, he said he could only play 1 set of tennis and normally he plays 5. Oh, he's fine. But I've seen people like that.
Yeah.
Or he could only do 30 minutes on his bike, but he's an ultra, like he rides 100-mile rides, right?
Yeah.
So you have to kind of say, what can you normally do? Like, so say normally I can play 3 sets of tennis and I'm not tired, but I have been feeling that way. Even if you know your risk factors, I have an early family history of heart disease. I know my cholesterol is high. So listing those things off, you're almost giving them the picture painted, and now they just have to fill in number 5 on the paint by number, right? That's all they got to do. Yeah.
I like that.
Yeah.
Okay.
I'm grateful to learn from you ladies. Like really, I'm sorry for how we're learning from you, Staci, in this way.
Thank you.
Yeah.
It makes me want to care for myself and the women in my life a little bit differently.
Yeah.
So, and thanks, Kim, for your expertise on that.
Absolutely. And I think women are at such a pivotal part too, because most often the women are making the decisions on the food to buy and to make, and choosing to be active with your family members and all that piece, which then instills that healthy lifestyle from the beginning. My parents were both PE majors, so I was kind of destined to and my dad's life work is studying exercise and preventing heart disease. So I kind of was born into it. Yeah.
Yeah.
Love that. And I'm grateful for you. So thank you.
Oh, I'm glad you texted me.
Many levels.
Me
too.
We're not going to give Kim's number in the show notes, but everyone needs to find a Kim.
Everyone needs a Kim, for sure. That's true.
You got to have a Kim somewhere for when you need a Kim.
Yes, for sure.
Just go stand outside your local hospital and track down.
Exactly.
You're like, Kim?
The coolest looking nurse.
Yeah. That's right.
I love it.
Love that.
So first of all, we just are grateful for both of you telling your story, Staci and Kim, giving us your expertise. And we're thankful because it helps us understand the risk factors. It helps us understand that it's not a man's disease. This is something that women need to take very seriously. It's the leading cause of death for women in the United States and globally, which is a startling number to talk about. And a couple things to just review. We've kind of identified how we got to where we are today, but the big question is, do you understand your risk factors? Do you understand what the symptoms are? Do you have the education? And then the second is, can you figure out ways to communicate that don't minimize your importance? Because as a person, you are important. You are important to those people that love you in your lives. And as we kind of think about that, sometimes I know women will take steps because they'll say, I'll do it for my children. And whatever your reason is to do these things, something we've learned from you is let's advocate for ourselves a little better. Let's be not demanding, because we're not trying to be outside of our voice, but let's stand up for ourselves when we have these symptoms by writing them down, speaking clearly about them, and not minimizing them as if we're trying to make the decision for that caregiver. Give the information, give it directly, be upfront, and take action, and not try to wait it out at home. Get right in there. With that said, thank you both for being here, and
thank you for having me.
Appreciate you. Yeah. Once again, thank you for joining us today. Please remember to rate, share, and subscribe to our podcast. And thank you for listening to Asking for a Friend.
Let us know what you thought of the episode. Our email is hello@afafpodcast.com. This show is for educational purposes only and is copyrighted. Written permission must be granted before syndication or rebroadcasting. Thanks for listening to Asking for a Friend with TalkDoc.